The first question we're going to address is what is a revolution? And to able to do what we need to do, you've got to know this. A revolution is simply, as defined on the screen, is an overthrow of an existing government by a group of people. Sometimes it can be like a radical change in society, like a technology revolution, but most of the time we're talking about a forceful overthrow of a government. Now we're going to start to discuss how this revolutionary period started and where it came from and the causes. That's the primary focus of this first part of this video series. Now we know what a revolution is. Let's take a look at where the Age of Revolution started from. What was the predominant cause of the Age of Revolution? And basically what it is this Renaissance spirit that flowed into the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment empowered new thoughts and new ideas that people could grasp and take a hold of, combine that with the availability of the printing press, and a seed of revolution was planted, and it really developed from there. These new things of freedom, these new things of people running the government, these new things of reason being applied to all areas of life resulted in these political revolutions. And it's the Enlightenment really that provided a spark for all these people who had all these problems with society, who had lack of social opportunity, economic deprivation. It was the Enlightenment that gave these people the focus, the ideas, the motivation to revolt and to change their lives as well as their government. Now let's take a look at some of the conditions that needs to be present for a revolution to occur. And these are true for most revolutions, but especially for the Age of Revolutions. First and foremost, you must have a discontented social class system where people cannot get any more advancement. And this causes a lot of disenfranchisement among the people, and it causes people to want to revolt because they can't move forward in their social class. So one of the things you look for for a cause of a revolution is social class disenchantment, social class dissatisfaction, where they cannot get advancements. They are stuck. Another thing that sort of goes hand in hand with social class disenfranchisement, where they can't get advancement in social class, is this: people are restless and they feel like they're being held down by restrictions in society, such as restriction on religion or the economy or the government. This is what prevents advancement in the social class. Also, most people are kind of optimistic about their future, and they can be optimistic about the future. But when you see in a society this optimism can't be reached, it's blocked by something, that is another reason for a revolution to occur, because people cannot get forward. And another sign of approaching a major revolution is when the social classes close to each other are hostile. And nowhere is this more apparent than when you're going to take a look at Latin American revolutions, where the top two classes are really hostile toward each other. A big problem is that for revolution, as a cause of a revolution, is that government just doesn't respond to the need of the people. They're not getting support itself. The government can't get a support from any majority of the population that would be able to maintain its power. So since it can't get enough support, the government is overthrown. Finally, a sign of impending revolution can come from a government that cannot organize its finances. French Revolution, for instance, one of the biggest reasons for it is because that they just could not get their finances together. They were bankrupt. They couldn't pay for basic services, and this gets people stressed and flustered, because if the government's bankrupt, if the government can't function, then people can't advance within society. And this is a major cause of revolution above. And I got the list up there for you to review. And think about this as you read about the various revolutions, the Latin American, especially the French revolutions. You will see these things played out. And you need to be thinking about these as you answer questions and as you're reading the primary sources. Look at the Declaration of Rights of Man and how do they reflect to these calls or relate to these causes of revolutions. Now I'm going to address a couple other areas about 4 other areas that deal with social revolutions, political revolutions are called, and their causes. First is social injustice. People treated one fairly, whether it's between the classes or whether it's between themselves and the government. And how do they remedy this unfairness? They have nowhere else to go. They revolt. And social injustice or social class injustice is one of the major causes of political revolution in our history, because when people feel like they're stuck in the class and they can't move, they're going to revolt. And other factor I wanted to point out specifically is economic distress. Economic distress, people are unhappy about their standard of living. It could be taxation, it could be job related, it could be lack of advancement, but think of how economic distress is related to social problems or social injustice. If you can't get more money, you can't improve your situation. The two go hand in hand. So another important factor for the cause of these revolutions we'll be discussing is economic distress. People can't move up. People can't advance in a job. People cannot go anywhere in their current job. And this causes distress. If the government can't fix that stress, it explodes. People revolt. They have broken the social contract as described by the Enlightenment philosophers, and particularly Locke, and they can now go back and say, I'm missing my natural right. I cannot have my right to property. Therefore, since you broke your contract, I can revolt. Economic stress, social injustices, both hand in hand, both are major causes for the revolutions that we will be studying. And as you examine the upcoming revolutions we're talking about, think about economic distress, think about social injustice, think about the other factors that we have seen, and think about society today, and see if you can relate anything to anything you see going on in our society today. Because these factors are not limited to the age of revolutions. These factors can be fit just about any revolution we'll be discussing. Finally, we have nationalism, basically the excessive pride given to for a given nation or people. Nationalism results from being basically proud of who you are. And nationalism can lead to feelings that your nation's the best, your organization's the best. And nationalism grew greatly during the Age of Revolution. South American people were proud of their common experience, proud of their common language. They couldn't relate to the Spanish rulers, so they had a very nationalistic approach to their revolution. They had a very pro-Latin American revolution on their social identity. And this spirit of nationalism, this spirit of being proud of where you're from and what you are, was a major spark for these revolutions. And a lot of times this nationalism was expressed through democracies, people coming together, being excited about being French, being excited about being Latin American, being excited about being Haitian. And they come together and they express this nationalism through the newfound philosophies of democracy and the other philosophies we study. And so it sort of shone through these philosophies that were being propagated during the Enlightenment era. Now let's take a look at some of the revolutions we're going to be discussing. And I included in this list, even though it's not technically included as part of the Age of Revolution, the English Glorious Revolution. You can see the description by there. We will not be discussing the American Revolution because we want to save that for American history. But we will be discussing the French, Latin American, the Haitian revolutions, which is included within Latin America, and very briefly the Russian revolutions. The French Revolution was a very, very much so class-based West revolution based on the three estates, as was the Latin American and the Haitian. Both the Latin American, Haitian, and French Revolution have some commonalities that cannot be ignored. They're class-based. They're economically treated differently. There's a lot of economic austerity, lack of economic opportunity. There was a very large lower class that was being led by a very small upper class of intellectuals during all of these revolutions. And these are the ones that we're going to be predominantly focusing on. And it's also like a domino theory if you think about it, what happened during the Age of Revolutions. It kicked off with the American Revolution. After the American Revolution, the next domino fell was the French Revolution. After the French Revolution, they inspired the Latin American and Haitian revolutions. And then later on, the Russian Revolution, which is outside our period, but it shares the same common characteristics as the Age of Revolutions. That revolution during the Age of Revolutions. And the three we're going to be focusing on during our next unit, the French, the Latin American, and the Haitian, we're going to be searching out what is common in each one. What are the factors that drove these revolutions? How are they similar? And I want you to ask this question as you examine these three revolutions in your readings. What is the impact of a class system that offers no opportunity for advancement? All three, there's this rigid class system. Second, what is the effect of a government's failure to provide for the needs of its people? We see most of this in the French Revolution, but also in the Latin American. The government provided very little needs for their constituencies in South America, and therefore there was a revolution. So as you examine these three different revolutions, they're the questions I want you to address and think about. Now let's summarize what we've already covered. I'm going to give you a brief summary. Now if you take a look, first up on the summary is this concept of social stagnation. Social stagnation is the inability to move up or down the social scale. That is a major cause of revolutions, and particularly during the Age of Revolution. Economic distress, the lack of economic advancement, a bad economy is a major cause of revolution. Social injustice, the mistreatment of different classes of people, whether by the government or by higher classes of people. New ideas can provide a spark that starts a revolution. And nationalism, which is a cause and a result of a revolution. Now, what this has done is this has given you a background of what are revolutions. How do you spot them? How do you identify the causes of a revolution and what you need to look for? Make sure you understand these, because as you analyze the different types of revolutions that we're going to be discussing, we're going to be talking about, like I said, the French, the Haitian, the Latin American, you'll need to draw these things out and compare them in the different societies. Okay, because each one, even though they have similar threads, very similar, had their own unique differences. So you're going to know the similarities, and you're going to need to know the differences of these things. You're going to be able to pick out those conceptual categories that I gave you. Have a good day, and talk to you later.